You're listening to Puma Podcast.
Hi, you're listening to Teka Teka News powered by Puma Podcast. When we think of chocolate, we often think of the brands from Belgium, Switzerland, France, and maybe even the US. But another Puma Podcast program, What's Up? Araling Panlipunan Rebooted, deep dives into the Philippines and its long history with the decadent treat. Have a listen.
So if there's one thing Sab and I agree on, it's chocolate.
Dark chocolate, white chocolate, tablea, brownies, that movie Chocolat. Give me chocolate straight into my veins.
Considering the amount of chocolate decadence cakes and boutique chocolate shops popping up everywhere, it's clear that most Filipinos love chocolate. Which isn't surprising. Tablea is a specialty product of provinces like Batangas, and different kinds of chocolate were even mentioned in Jose Rizal's Nori Me Tangere. Cacao, the raw ingredient of chocolate, grows right here in the Philippines.
And even more than that, our chocolate culture is thriving. Filipino-made chocolates are drawing attention and winning awards all over the world. So today, we want to talk a little bit about the history of chocolate and how it came to the Philippines, because it has a lot to do with our secret ties to Mexico.
And you'll hear from the owner of an award-winning chocolate company based in the Philippines and bringing uniquely Pinoy flavors to the world. I'm Siege Tantenko, reporter and history nerd, and I spent a significant amount of my baon on Flat Tops chocolate in school.
And I'm Sab Schnabel, a historian and a comedian who has worked for Carlos Celdran, the National Museum of the Philippines, and the Guggenheim in Venice. And I used to be allergic to chocolate, but then I ate so much anyway, so now I'm immune.
Where did chocolate even come from?
Chocolate can be traced all the way back beyond the Mayans to the ancient Olmecs of southern Mexico. That means that for nearly 4,000 years, people have been drinking chocolate.
Because chocolate wasn't initially consumed in bar form. Originally, chocolate was a drink, much like our chocolate.
We in the Philippines actually drink something pretty close to what ancient Mesoamericans drank. The Olmecs were the first to take the fruit of the cacao tree and use the seeds to make into a drink, but it was mostly used for rituals and as a medicine.
The Mayans, the civilization that rose after the Olmecs, also drank chocolate. They mixed it with chilies, water, and cornmeal and made a frothy drink called chocolatl, which means bitter water.
They were probably drinking it for its stimulating properties. The Aztecs took chocolate appreciation to the next level using cacao beans as currency.
They were supposedly worth more than gold.
You can't eat gold, but chocolate is a huge part of Mesoamerican and South American culture. The Latin name for cacao tree is Theobroma cacao, which means food of the gods.
So that's how chocolate came to be. But how did it get to the Philippines?
The short answer? The Spanish. The first chocolate seeds were brought to Spain by Hernan Cortez after his conquest of Mexico, and the chocolate drink made with the seeds seduced Europe with its deliciousness.
The problem is that chocolate only grows in the tropical belt, so they couldn't grow it in Spain. With the steadily growing demand for chocolate, they needed places to grow it.
But Spain had an ideal place to grow it. Their colonies!
Dun dun dun!
The first cacao beans were brought to the Philippines sometime around the 17th century. There's not a consensus on when the exact date was, but we know it came through on the Manila-Acapulco galleon trade.
We've all heard a little about the Manila-Acapulco galleon trade in school.
Here's how it worked.
Trade goods would come from Manila, like silk, mother of pearl, and porcelain, and would sail to Acapulco. The goods would be taken overland to Veracruz, Mexico, and then brought to Spain. The Spanish paid for these goods with silver from their colonies.
This was one of the very first global trade routes and connected Europe to the Americas and Asia.
The winds in the Pacific work like a big circle. So if you want to get to Southeast Asia from Mexico, you catch southwesterly winds that will blow towards the Philippines. These ships would sometimes pass by Guam and the Marianas Islands along this route.
And to go back to Mexico from the Philippines, you take the northeasterly route up near Japan that will take the ships down the coast of the US and back to Acapulco.
Each galleon had to be escorted by armed ships because galleons were so valuable that they were constantly under the threat of pirates and other powers like the British, Dutch, and Portuguese.
Those ships Jack Sparrow was going after? Probably galleons. And when they talk about the Spanish Main in those movies, they don't mean Spain. They mean the mainland of the Spanish colonies, like Mexico and other parts of what is now South America.
Even the currency called pieces of 8 from pirate stories like Treasure Island are the pieces of silver used to pay for porcelain and goods from Asia. Galleons were the largest ships made in Europe up until this point, and they were always groaning under the weight of silver or trade goods, like chocolate.
According to the Augustinian chronicler Gaspar de San Agustin, cacao beans were first brought to the Philippines by a sea pilot named Pedro Bravo, who entrusted them to a priest named Bartolome Bravo in Camarines. But the Franciscans and the Jesuits also take credit for bringing the beloved bean to the islands.
We know from Ramon Reyes Lala's book, The Philippine Islands, quoted in Ambeth Ocampo's 2016 article, Chocolate in History, that Filipinos kept cacao trees in small groves, sending a few beans back to Spain, but keeping the bulk of them to make into chocolate or champurrado.
Chocolate is the Filipino version of chocolatl. While theirs was a bitter and spicy drink, ours is a delightfully sweet drink made with evaporated or condensed milk and beaten with a baterol, a traditional wooden whisk. Mexico has a similar tool to the baterol. Theirs is called a molinillo. So much of our food and drink actually have Mexican influences because of the Manila-Acapulco galleon trade. But of all of them, chocolate is our favorite.
Chocolate flourished here, and we became a producer of cacao. But since then, we've developed our own taste for chocolate, one that brings in the unique flavors of our different regions. Up next, you'll hear what it's like to produce chocolate in the Philippines straight from a Filipino chocolatier.
Cacao beans can grow all over the Philippines, and so chocolate is part of the food culture of different provinces. My grandma grew up in Batangas, so she swore by Batangas tablea.
I used to work for a travel show, and every province we went to, there was some delicacy made with chocolate. Leyte has moron, a sticky rice cake cooked in coconut milk and filled with chocolate. Cebu has chocolate-covered dried mangoes. Bohol serves chocolate calamay, a sticky pudding with coconut milk and brown sugar.
But beyond our traditional chocolate products, in recent years, we've seen the rise of Filipino-made chocolate brands that represent the future of our cacao industry.
So hi, my name is Philo Chua. I'm the founder of Tio and Philo Chocolates. I eat chocolate almost every day, but only small bites. I just love the process of creating something. Even when I was a kid, I always like to make stuff, something creative, like some handicraft, arts and craft. That's what really gets me going. To be able to create something, right? And then share it with everybody.
In the early 2000s, Philo was working in the States.
And while I was there living by myself, I had to cook for myself. So that leads to cooking and baking. And then from baking, parang nainganyo lang ako sa mga chocolates. And then there was this one shop that featured like chocolates from all over the world. They were featuring single origin chocolates. And that really intrigued me.
Philo had already been thinking of coming back to the Philippines.
Out of the blue, I just thought like, hey, wouldn't it be great na we have like chocolate where we use Philippine cacao? So that's where the idea was born. And then,
One problem he faced. Despite our history and love for chocolate, it was hard to find cacao at the time.
So during that time, it's not like right now where there's a lot of people going to cacao planting or where there's like a booming cacao industry right now. Back then, people have stopped planting cacao already, like maybe late 1980s or something around that time, switched to like mango crops or other crops, no? Because they didn't find cacao to be profitable anymore. So when I came back, I actually had trouble finding cacao because there wasn't a lot of sources for cacao. So I was just like, wherever I can find cacao, that's where I will get. So it just so happened that, I was searching a lot of message boards. And then one thing led to another, got in touch to a professor in Mindanao, and then he was able to like bring me around to some farms.
Philo started with 2 bars, 44% milk and 70% dark chocolate. They were focused on the idea of creating high-quality versions of these classics. But their company really took off once things started getting creative.
At the start, it was mainly getting like classic flavors and then putting a Filipino twist on it. Dark chocolate with orange is a very European flavor, a very classic European flavor. Sabi ko, what's another citrus that we can use? So that's when we decided to use calamansi.
While European brands had crispy chocolate made with Rice Krispies, Theo and Philo came out with pili nuts and pinipig. They then started experimenting with flavor combos that were Filipino through and through.
For example, the green mango and salt, well, that's really very unique by itself. But that was something that a friend recommended. I was originally going to just use green mango and chocolate. But then, hey, why don't we add salt also? Para more of like the street snack or how you would eat like the green mango. These days, how we come up with flavors now, It's really looking more at what ingredients we have here in the Philippines, trying to make use of it. So we try to always integrate local flavors, local ingredients with our chocolate.
Philo says the industry has changed a lot since they started in 2007. It's a different time with different challenges.
Definitely. Right now, there's almost an abundance of cacao. Unfortunately, there's not as many processors right now. Because technically, here in the Philippines, our consumption rate of chocolate is not as high as other countries. So there's a kind of imbalance right now wherein there's slight overproduction of cacao beans compared to what's being demanded by the market.
Local artisanal companies like Theo and Philo put a lot of effort into quality and unique flavors.
Well, obviously, one of the main challenges is the price point, especially in a country like the Philippines, where our spending power is not as big as other countries may be. Our prices are higher than supermarket chocolate, so sometimes people will ask, why would I buy your products when like an imported chocolate may cost less than ours, right? So we really have to make sure that we're producing something different, something unique, that it's not an apple-to-apple comparison.
Check out their new line that combines chocolate and nuts at theoandphilo.com. But to move the industry forward, Filipino chocolatiers like Philo don't just have to create products. They also have to go the extra mile to teach people to appreciate the potential of our chocolate.
It's a slow process, definitely. It's doing things like this that really helps it get the word out there. I've done a lot of small talks here and there, just talking about chocolate, how it's made. That's really how you do it, kasi there's no other way. It really takes a lot to slowly get to know more and more about the industry and how it's made. I guess one good thing is we used to do it in Gawad Kalingao in the Enchanted Farm in Bulacan. I would do demos so that they would see personally how it's done.
Filipino chocolatiers tried to educate the public by reconnecting us to our cacao.
So they would get to understand, try to connect with where does our chocolate come from, how it's made, who are the people involved, from the farmers to the processors. One sad thing about the industrialization of things, although we benefit a lot from it, there's always a disconnect between the products and how it's made. Right? Before making chocolate, I didn't even know what a cacao bean looks like.
The next level our cacao industry can reach for, says Philo, is maturity. A future where Filipino consumers fully appreciate the product, when Filipino producers are recognized for it, and when the Philippines is seen as a significant player in the global cacao scene.
The Philippines is still far from being a major producer. Most of the world's cacao comes from West Africa. Chances are the mass-produced chocolate you get in the grocery is made with ingredients from Ghana and the Ivory Coast.
This tells us that small countries can become a player or a major supplier. But Philo reminds us that as we grow the Philippine industry, we need to avoid some of the questionable labor practices that are happening in those countries.
At the same time, we don't want to get into the same boat that Ghana and Ivory Coast are in right now, wherein they may be producing more than half of the world's cacao, but then the prices are so low that actually the farmers are being exploited or not being paid very well.
There are two ways for a government to look at chocolate. One is as a commodity to be traded, like wood, wheat, or livestock. It's all about volume. But there's another way to position your chocolate industry, highlighting its quality. The industry term is fine flavor chocolate.
One nice thing that the government did right now is that they really position Philippine cacao as a fine flavor cacao. We're seen less as a commodity, but as something more of a high value crop.
That helps unlock fairer pay for our products, but it's just one step. There's also the whole game of branding, awards, and international recognition.
To be considered as a fine flavor, you also need to register your country in the ICCO.org, International Cocoa Organization. Afterwards, you need to back it up with some data or with instances to justify that you are a fine flavor. Companies like us and all these other chocolate brands here in the Philippines, we're all joining these competitions, right, and winning awards.
It translates to higher prices, but it makes for a more sustainable industry long-term and helps keep quality high. And it just feels right for our cacao farmers and chocolate companies to get the recognition because deserve naman talaga nila. They earned it.
For the last 3 instances of the world's 50 best cacao, we're always in that world's 50 best. We're getting better and better.
Not only are Filipino chocolates delicious, they're a piece of our heritage.
And a taste of what could be the future of the industry.
we should be called like the Asian chocolate capital. Maybe, why not, right? Let's dream big.
Philo's message to people, both here in the Philippines and abroad: learn about chocolate history, enjoy chocolate in the present, and be part of building the future of chocolate.
We were the first ones in Asia to have chocolate. We have been connected to the origins of chocolate for centuries. And yet, when we think of great chocolate, we often think of European chocolate. But historically, the raw ingredients don't grow in their land. They purchase cacao from other countries.
You know who grows their own chocolate? We do.
Please give Filipino chocolates a chance. Ours might be even better by supporting local chocolate makers or even other local companies. They're really helping make a better community for us all around. In the eyes of the global consumer, when they come to the Philippines, they actually see a lot of things that are great and a lot of things that are unique and special. So let's not think of them as just lang na parang, ay, ganun lang yan. No? Let's look at them in a whole different way, that it's actually something great.
The Philippines has had chocolate for centuries. It started as a crop introduced by our colonizers, but we've made it our own. And what comes next is up to us.
One thing's for sure, it's gonna be delicious. Normally, we like to end with something weird and wonderful from Filipino history, and this time it comes straight from Noli Me Tangere.
That's right, the classic novel all of us had to read in high school makes an appearance.
In chapter 11 of Noli, the alferez or lieutenant general warns Spaniards that they might be offered a cup of chocolate. And the kind of chocolate tells you how important you are in the eyes of the server.
Are you going over there to the convento to visit that sanctimonious rascal there, that little curate? Yes, well, if he offers you chocolate, which I doubt. But if he offers it, remember this. If he calls to the servant and says, Juan, make a cup of chocolate, then stay without fear. But if he calls out, Juan, make a cup of chocolate, then take your hat and leave on a run. What? The startled visitor would ask. Does he poison people? Carambas! No, man, not at all. What then? Chocolate means thick and rich, while chocolate means watered and thin. And that's basically a diss. Chocolate could be expensive, making it took work, so it was a common practice to water down the chocolate for less prominent guests.
If you're having trouble remembering, excellent. And ay, ito lang. Rest assured that for any of our listeners, we'd give you chocolate if we could.
I'm Tatiana Maligro. This episode was written by Siege Tantenko and Sab Schnabel for What's Up Araling Panlipunan Rebooted. This episode was produced by Josa Quiñones and edited by Joe Salcedo. If you want to hear more conversations like this, check out What's Up Araling Panlipunan wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening.